Hey everyone!
Hey everyone!
Welcome to episode 2
Of episode 2 of the Pines podcast.
It's a Pines podcast.
It's Joe here and Matt.
Yeah, Matt, and we're from the Pines Wind Farm team, and we're going to answer a couple of frequently asked questions we've been getting at the various drop-in days, which we've now done 5 of, Joe.
That's right.
5 drop-in days.
In 10 weeks.
In 10 weeks. It's good. It's been fantastic to be face-to-face with the Black Springs, the Oberon,
and the Barriga
and now the Barriga communities. And we're really, really pleased with kind of the respectful way that we've been able to work with everyone in the community. So,
and thank you everyone for coming out and taking the time to come and meet our team and to learn a bit more about the project proposal.
Yeah, exactly right. So I think we can jump straight into it. We've got kind of the top 5 or 6 frequently asked questions that we've got from all of our community open days. And Joe, I'll throw to you right away. What can you tell us about non-disclosure agreements? Are we asking people to sign these?
It's a really good question, and it's one that has frequently popped up. So the short answer is we're not asking anyone to sign any NDAs or non-disclosure agreements. We're willing to talk to anybody in the community without that. We're talking to neighbours in the community without an NDA. There will be no NDAs required at all.
Ever. So I think that's good. Hopefully that clears that one up. And if someone is asking you to sign an NDA, then they're not from the Pines Wind Farm. Good one.
Yeah. So I guess another question that we've received often is about insurance, particularly of potential wind farm neighbours. What have you been telling people about that, Matt?
Yeah, so this is one that to be honest, I'm a bit surprised has been coming up considering the history of wind energy projects in New South Wales. So in New South Wales and around Australia, there are hundreds of turbines operating and thousands of project neighbours. And we keep a very close eye. We talk with kind of the Energy Infrastructure Ombudsman and read their report every year. And this question about kind of not being able to procure insurance or not being able to get insurance or have higher insurance premiums because you're beside a wind farm project doesn't make a lot of sense to me. And the big reason for that really is just because if you're going to be impacting a project, you actually need to be able to impact it. And if you take a step back and you think about who is most incentivized to avoid damage to a wind farm, it's the wind farm owner. And so with a wind farm, and especially a wind farm in a forest, we're going to be doing a couple of things to try and make sure that our project can never be damaged by a fire, whether that's started in the forest by lightning or it comes from a neighbouring property. And the kind of things that we'll be doing is we'll be maintaining gravel hard stands underneath wind turbines. We'll be managing fire fuel on the forest floor, and that's something we're going to be actively doing before each fire season. Managing ladder fuels, so that's kind of I'm sure we're in a forestry region, so everyone knows that. But removing some of the branches on the lower limbs in and around wind turbines, and then the big one for us is just controlling and designing the project so that the blades, which are made out of fiberglass, so the tower itself, that's 3 or 4 inches of thick steel. We're pretty comfortable that isn't going to be damaged by fire. Everything else is inside the turbine, including the underground cable which comes through a conduit in the foundation. So everything else is kind of safely housed in the turbine. But turbine blades are fiberglass, and fiberglass can burn. So when we do the modelling, we need to make sure that we're giving a big enough gap between the top of the trees and the bottom of the turbine blade. So really we're doing all of these things to make sure even in the event that there's a big fire coming through the forest from whatever source, the turbines are not able to be damaged.
That's right. So it's all about reducing risk initially and really minimising the risk of fire impacting the wind turbines. And in addition to that, perhaps you want to talk about the wind turbine itself being the tallest structure in the environment, meaning that if there are things such as lightning strikes, that would be likely attracted to the wind turbine tip, which can safely take that lightning and bring it to ground.
Yeah, exactly. If lightning strikes a turbine, that's the perfect result because it means it's striking something that's not going to catch on fire. It's striking something that can safely earth that that lightning bolt down into the ground.
That's right, and with a size of potentially up to 300 metres tall from the ground to the top of the tip, that will definitely be the tallest structure in the surrounding environment. So that's also really good prevention.
Yeah, exactly,
strategy.
exactly. And with insurance, I mean, we're so confident that we're not going to have an issue with fires coming from neighbouring properties. That what we've actually decided to do, and you can see this in the frequently asked questions on our website, is we're willing to enter into an agreement with neighbours. So if neighbours join the neighbour scheme, and that's for either houses or just farming properties adjacent to the project, we will agree just to never make a claim against you, even in the event that you damage our property. So we'd cover you, we'd add you as what's called an additional insured in the project insurance, and then our insurance would respond to damage to our project, even in the event if it was caused by a neighbour that's within 3.5 kilometres of the project. So
hopefully that gives some comfort, and we spent a lot of time and thought quite carefully about how we can make sure that neighbours feel comfortable as well. So yeah, that's really good to hear, Matt.
Yeah. So what do we got next here? So turbine numbers. This is the number one question we get all the time, and we totally understand where people are coming from with this question as well, because it's the question I would be asking as well. So what's the answer, Joe?
So the answer is, at the moment, we don't have a number, which I understand is a bit frustrating, as Matt has just said. This is, a key part of the project, but at this stage, we're just really early on in the project investigations phase. So we are really focusing on talking to as many near neighbours as we can before we start designing the project. And that's really to get people's feedback and input and understanding into what their concerns are, what their feedback is. And in fact, we've had a few neighbours who have said, well, if this project could go ahead, could I potentially also host some infrastructure? So that could be wind turbines, it could be lay down areas during construction, it could be potentially a substation or transmission lines. So really want to give people an opportunity to speak with us first and express potentially their interest in joining the project, either as a host themselves or potentially they'd be interested in our neighbour benefits program. So yeah, we really want to make sure that that's all covered first before we really do any design work.
Yeah, exactly right. And so with that in mind, you can reach us at the project email address, which is contact@thepineswindfarm.com.au. So if you'd like to organise a meeting with us, we would love to meet with you.
Yeah, definitely. And I guess our aim in terms of releasing a first design, which is the preliminary idea of the wind farm, that is looking to be at the end of 2024.
Yeah, by the end of the year we'll have something out, and when we do that, we're going to be doing another big round of consultation. I think that's right, isn't it?
That's right. So we'll do another series of drop-in sessions just like we have already in Black Springs over on in Beauregard. We'll go out again with those maps and show you what that looks like.
Yeah, good one.
Yeah, so I guess another question I've received often is, how tall are the wind turbines? We touched on it briefly, but do you want to talk about how that works?
Yeah, for sure. So when you're going out to get a permit for anything, whether it's your house or anything else, you always get a permit from, whether it's from council or in this instance from the state government, which we'll get to in a second. You always want to get a permit for kind of the largest extent that you might need. And in this instance, what we've talked about consistently is that the turbines might be up to a maximum of 300 metres. That doesn't necessarily mean that the turbines will be 300 metres, and just so we're clear, like that's up to the top of the tip when the top of the turbine rotor is pointing kind of straight up. So it doesn't mean that the turbine will be that tall, but it just means that in the permitting, that is what we'll be seeking, up to 300 metres. It could be shorter, it could be significantly shorter. 300 metres is well beyond the tallest project in Australia at the moment. But yeah, that's what 300 metres, that's what the 300 metres means.
And actually that was a follow-up question we often get. Are there any 300 metre turbines already?
In Australia or in the world?
In Australia.
No, there's not any 300 metre turbines in Australia yet.
Okay. Very good.
So, next question, Joe, about noise. So how noisy are wind turbines?
It's a really good question. There are variations between turbine models.
Could we be having this conversation directly under a wind turbine?
That's a really good question. We could be having this conversation directly under the wind turbine. You would be able to hear noise under the turbine, a bit of a whooshing sound, I guess is how I would describe it best. but I wouldn't describe it as being particularly noisy that you couldn't have a conversation anymore. What
And
do you think?
Yeah, no, I think that's right. And I think staff on turbines, even when they're kind of working in and around outside turbines, no one's wearing ear protection or anything like that. Like, it's not something that's kind of loud enough, even standing right underneath. So yeah, this conversation at this level would work.
Could totally happen.
Could totally happen.
Yeah, definitely. There are also strict noise guidelines that need to be met at neighbouring houses relative to the wind farm. So those guidelines are very strict. So the noise limitation, do you have a sense there?
Yeah, so the nighttime the nighttime noise limit for a wind turbine in New South Wales is 35 decibels, and I'd encourage people to jump on Google and see if you can find how loud that is. It's described as things like, whispering or sitting in a library or a quiet office or something. But yeah, have a look at that and see what you can find online about how quiet 35 decibels is. And the other important thing about 35 decibels is it's actually the exact same nighttime protection that rural properties have right now. There's no kind of special extra noise that wind farms are allowed to produce. We just have to meet that 35 decibel limit at rural properties in New South Wales, which is what the EPA is already enforcing for all of your neighbours around your house.
And at what distance do you think that 35 decibels would be met?
Yeah, we think it's at around one. It obviously depends on the turbine model. Not every turbine is as noisy or as quiet as each other, but we think it's about 1.8 kilometres away before you get down to kind of that 35 decibel.
And importantly also, it really depends what other types of things are in the environment. If you live in an area with a lot of dense trees, for instance, when
pine
it's
trees.
windy,
Pine trees soak up.
There's a lot of noise being soaked up, but also generated through the rustling of leaves, things like that. So there can be a bit of background noise when it is very windy from natural things such as trees and branches and things like that. So there's other noises as well when it's windy.
No, good one. And the other thing is, if you like, we've been offering a couple of people, and we'd be open to kind of organising for more, to take people on a trip out to see a wind farm project. So if you've never been to a wind farm project, you've never stood under a wind turbine, you want to see firsthand exactly what it's really like, please reach out, contact at thepineswindfarm.com.au, let us know, and we'll organise a time to get you out to see a operating project.
Sounds good. All right. I've got a final question for you.
Okay, fire away.
We have received a investigations permit.
Yes.
But have we got a permit to build a wind farm?
Yeah, there's been a lot of confusion about this one, and the short answer and the long answer is no, we don't have a permit that allows us to build a wind farm. So we've been granted by Forestry Corporation what's called an investigations permit, and you can think of that almost like a fossicking license or a hunting license. We've got a license under this investigation permit to investigate a possible wind farm in certain parts of the forest. And I'd encourage you to jump on the website www.pineswindfarm.com.au, because there's a very good map there that shows the area where we can investigate a project and where we are not allowed to investigate a project.
Mm-hmm.
And then if we decide down the track, and we haven't decided yet, but if we decide down the track that there's a good possibility of a project somewhere in that investigation area, then we then have a right to apply for a planning permit, and that is a state government. It's called what's called a state significant development process. There's more information about that on our website as well in the approval section.
And just to add to that as well, investigations, that includes things like undertaking site surveys, looking at wind monitoring, understanding things like what are the ecology, what is the potential visual impact, noise impact, all of the kind of detailed studies that are required for a development application, which will then be put together in an environmental impact statement, which is then submitted to New South Wales State Planning. Department of Planning, Housing and Infrastructure, I believe.
I think that's right. They've got a new name almost every other day, but I think that's what they're called. That's what they're called at the moment.
So that is a 3 to 5 year process typically, because those investigations really take a really long time. So ecology, for instance, we have at least 2 years worth of seasonal bird and bat monitoring and surveying on the ground as well. It just takes a really long time to undertake these surveys and undertake regular consultation in that time as well, before we're in a position to submit a development application to New South Wales planning. So this is not a short-term process by any means. It's going to take quite a while for us to get to that point where we're ready to submit a development application to the state.
Yeah, long story short, at least 3 to 5 years until there's a possibility of a project approval. And I think that's it for today. So look, thanks for tuning in. Again, contact at thepineswindfarm.com.au if you'd like to reach out to us.
Great, and we're looking forward to seeing you at the Barraga Sheep Show on the 31st of August.
Yeah, that's right. Thank you. Thanks for tuning in.
See ya.